Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of Image Initiation. This is a series where I dive deep into the Image Comics backlog as someone who really grew up following only the big two and read stories I've missed out on. And The Walking Dead is one of them. I've never been a fan of zombie fiction. It is either too gross, too scary, or both. I'm not a horror person. Halloween is my least favorite holiday. But Walking Dead is pretty synonymous with Image. So I didn't watch the show when it was coming out either. Didn't have any interest at all, but I thought now is finally the time. So I've started reading The Walking Dead, and the goal is to read through it all and record these videos for the series. The way these are gonna kind of go down is that I'm going to break it up into I'm not sure if they're just the story arc titles or if they're also like just the titles for the trade paperbacks, but basically I'm going to be breaking each of those up into two sections. One which is a summary of kind of major events, major deaths, that sort of a thing, followed by a shorter section where I give my thoughts on everything that happened. Originally, I was going to split this into 4 parts, one per compendium, but I just finished recording the 4th arc, the Heart's Desire, and realized I'm already at an hour. So we're going to break this up instead of by compendium, basically by Walking Dead hardcover deluxe edition, which seems to be 24 issues apiece. So that gets us in this first video from the first arc of Days Gone By to the end of the Heart's Desire. So I think that's going to be the kind of format for these, just because I don't want to have a 3-hour video. So I think that's how we're going to handle it. If you've been a fan, comment down below, let me know what you think of my thoughts. If you're new and haven't read it yet, since I am going to be summarizing major events, there will be full spoilers throughout the entirety of the video. So if you want to read along, read by trade or trade paperback or whatever, it's basically each arc is about 6 issues. So you can come back. I'll have chapter markers in the description, so you can jump around to kind of wherever you're at. But without further ado, let's get into the first section, which is Days Gone By. So, first issue, we start off with Rick Grimes and his partner Shane, who are both police officers, in basically a standoff with a criminal on the highway. Rick gets shot, and next thing we know, he's wakes up in a hospital bed. Not sure how long he's been out, but he's trying to get a nurse to come, anyone to come over to the bed to help explain things, but no one seems to be on their way. He exits his room, walks through the hospital, finds it completely abandoned. So this was an incredible just kind of tone and environment, kind of mood setting very early on. And I think it is important to say that the art is in black and white, which, if you're a Western comics fan, it might have thrown you a little bit, but as a manga fan myself as well, that's traditionally in black and white, it didn't really faze me too much. But the art is somewhat simple, but it is effective. I think that just seeing Rick and even his subtle facial expressions while walking around the hospital were really kind of, tastefully done is a weird thing to say, but just really well done. And that's all due to Charlie Adlard, the artist for the book. I would say over time, I'm not sure the art dramatically improves, but I feel like it's constantly tightened up. So seeing Rick's face, and then as he exits the hospital, he sees just this decayed zombie woman on the ground next to a bicycle and just breaks down. It's just putting myself in his shoes, being like, what in the world would you be thinking at that moment in time if you just woke up after an amount of time you have no idea you were out for, and to just see this and what it means for the world around you and your family. So he takes the bicycle, goes home, goes back to his house, finds that his wife and son are gone, the house has been looted, and he walks out of the house, boom, knocked unconscious by a kid with a shovel to the back of the head. The kid's name was Dwayne. His father's name is Morgan. They're going around and scavenging. Dwayne thought that Rick was one of these zombies, so that's why he attacked. Morgan gives us some backstory that the outbreak that causes these people to turn into these things started about a month ago. Before kind of everything shut down, the government had told folks to go to big cities because it would be easier for the military to kind of protect them if they all gathered together in a single area. So after kind of getting some backstory, Rick takes Morgan and Dwayne to his police station, hoping that the armory at the police station hasn't been touched. Luckily enough, they get there. He has the key, unlocks the door, and they're able to get some guns to protect themselves with. After that, they part ways. Rick takes a police cruiser and I believe gives the keys to another one to Morgan and Dwayne, and kind of says goodbyes at that point, as he is trying to drive to Atlanta, which is the closest city. They're right outside Atlanta in Georgia, because that's where his wife's family is. So it would make sense if that's where her and their son went. So he starts driving to Atlanta, runs out of gas. After looking for a little bit, he finds a horse in kind of this rural area, takes the horse and keeps riding toward Atlanta. Gets there, and Atlanta is just total ruin, just overrun by these zombies. Rides into town. Zombies are moving pretty slowly, but eventually gets overrun by them, and they knock him off the horse and they start eating the horse, which is sad. Anytime an animal's hurt, I get sad. But he hears a voice yelling from an alley, so he scrambles to get over and finds another survivor named Glenn, who lets him know that the sound of Rick's gun shooting the zombies basically just kept attracting them over and over to swarm him. So it seems like Glenn knows his way around. He pulls down a fire escape. They both climb up it to get off of the street and to kind of catch their breaths. Eventually, with Glenn's knowledge, because it seems like he's been doing this for some time now, they find their way out of the city. Glenn says, hey man, it's likely your family didn't make it, and they died somewhere in the city among these hundreds, if not thousands, of zombies at this point. He does tell Rick that there is a small camp outside of the city with some survivors, and who knows, maybe he could get lucky and his wife and son are there. So, figuring he has no other lead at this point, Rick follows Glenn back to the camp, and sure enough, Lori, his wife, and Carl, his son, are there, as well as Shane, his partner, from the beginning of the story as well. So they get there, and It seems to be survivor camp kind of revolving around this RV. So other survivors at the camp are a guy named Alan, Amy and Andrea, who are sisters, probably kind of early 20s ish, most likely. Alan is probably mid 30s ish. Carol, who has a daughter named Sophia, who I can't remember. I think Carol is married to Alan. I think. Dale, who's an older guy, and it's his RV that's in the middle of the camp. Donna, I stand corrected, Donna, who's the wife of Alan, and they have two twin sons named Ben and Billy, who are probably about maybe a little younger than Carl, or around Carl's age, so probably about 7 or 8. Excuse me. And another guy named Jim. So the reason why these folks didn't get caught up in the chaos of Atlanta is because they all kind of got to the city late after the evacuation orders to get there. So they got there, saw it was overrun, and kind of set up camp outside to try and have some sort of safe area to kind of figure out what to do next. Time goes on of everyone in this camp surviving for a while. Rick starts teaching everyone how to use a gun, because him and Shane are really, they're both the cops, and they're the only ones with formal training. Eventually, though, Amy, Andrea's sister, is bitten in the arm, and before she comes back as a zombie, her sister shoots her in the head so that doesn't happen, because the only way folks don't come back as these zombie creatures is by basically severe brain damage or like blunt force trauma to the head. In the chaos, Jim was bitten as well, so they're already down 2 folks, but Jim doesn't die right away. He gets sicker and sicker over time. And eventually, instead of asking the group to end his life, he requests that they take him and drop him off on the outskirts of Atlanta, hoping that, you know, maybe he can reunite with his family he lost during the initial outbreak. Granted, there are some of these zombies now, but I mean, this close to this world-shattering event, the logic kind of goes out the window. Like, yeah, I want to be there so I can die and then turn and maybe I can find my zombie family. Like, sure, man. It's no one has a playbook for this right now, so whatever kind of gives you peace. The entire time that, so they drop him off, but this entire time they've been at camp, there's been a growing tension that's mostly one-sided from Shane toward Rick. It turns out when Rick was in the hospital after he got shot at the very beginning of the story, when the outbreak started happening, Shane took care of Lori and Carl and escorted them down to Atlanta and took them down there. And at one point, they ended up sleeping together. And so Shane really wasn't expecting Rick to come back, and so he could kind of move in and be with Lori. Rick shows up. Rick kind of starts making calls and decisions for the group that I think Shane had been doing prior to that. And Shane just slowly starts unraveling. At one point, him and Rick end up going into the forest to do some hunting, but Shane starts yelling at him that he wasn't supposed to come back, starts pointing his gun at Rick and is about to fire and kill Rick, when all of a sudden we see the panel of basically Shane getting shot in the side of the neck. And you think it might be Rick, but it's Carl, his son. His son had heard the yelling, followed into the forest, saw Shane pointing his gun at Rick, and decided, as this 8-year-old kid who had just learned how to use a gun, to protect his dad, and he shot Rick in the neck. So the kind of some of the heartbreaking end dialogue to this initial arc happens around then, and Carl saying, "It's not the same as killing the dead ones, Daddy." Rick says, "It never should be, son. It never should be." So the deaths in this story arc were Shane, Amy, and Jim. So that's the story summary. I'll get into my thoughts now. So like I said, I'm not a big zombie guy, but this first arc did what it needed to do, and it pulled me in and hooked me right from the beginning. You've seen zombie stories a billion times before, and the kind of lone exceptions for me that I've actually kind of enjoyed have been The Last of Us. I played through the original game back when it came out in 2013, and I played part 2 in 2020. And I played through Dead Space when it first came out in 2008. Kind of zombies, kind of very different kind of zombies. But you hear, or at least, and this might have come from The Walking Dead, to be totally honest, as I wasn't following the discourse. But in the apocalypse, the real enemies aren't the zombies, they're the other humans. And as we can kind of see, that's the case with Shane, especially. And people just constantly being paranoid and unsure and always on guard. So this was a great start. Some of my early favorite characters, I think Rick is a really kind of obvious choice that I enjoyed. And I kind of like Dale a little bit, but none of the characters besides Rick, and I think this was by design for the first arc, he's your main character. None of the other characters really jumped out at me too much, but there was enough characterization to most of them to where I'm like, okay, I need to see what happens to them next. So, really good first arc. Next up is the second story arc, which is Miles Behind Us. So let's get into the recap of major events. So, Miles Behind Us, the second arc, begins with a flashback from Lori. And this is what I briefly mentioned in the previous section about her trip down to Atlanta with Carl and Shane, and showing one night Carl being asleep in the car, she ends up sleeping with Shane. So, flashback forward, Rick had been pushing for a while for the group to kind of pile up into the RV and find a safer location to kind of make their base in. But there had been a lot of pushback from Shane and from others within the group. But after the large attack, everyone kind of became a little more weary and open to the idea, so that's exactly what they do. Everyone piles into Dale's RV, leave the area. On their way to finding someplace new, they come across another group of survivors, Tyrese, his daughter Julie, and her boyfriend Chris. Tyrese immediately is super likable, coming into the group saying, obviously, we'll do our part. We're not here for any kind of like free passes, like whatever the group needs us to do, we'll do. Julie seems to be somewhat on board, and Chris seems to be a prick. So that's a big addition to the group, just because they kind of lost kind of like a physical powerhouse in Shane. Shane was a really big physical guy who could kind of help fend off zombies if there were no guns. And Tyrese kind of steps into that role as well, without the baggage of sleeping with Rick's wife. And we see kind of briefly after that, while overnight on lookout, Rick and Tyrese just talking and reflecting about everything that's happening, the dangers for their kids, and kind of trying to make sense of everything going on around them, which is impossible. Carol and Tyrese also end up kind of flirting and hitting it off, and kind of end up together. Lori tells Rick that she's pregnant, which on one hand obviously is awesome news. On the other hand, there's no hospitals left or organized medical care. Really need to be lucky and find someone who has some sort of medical experience. But they make a case multiple times, like there were no hospitals for thousands of years and people had babies, so let's just kind of hope for the best. Dale, shortly after, talks to Rick after Lori tells everyone she's pregnant, and is like, hey buddy, just with the timing and everything, that might be probably is Shane's kid and not yours. And Rick is very much aware of that, but he basically says to Dale, I can't talk about it or I'll lose what little sanity I have left and my ability to help look after and make decisions for this group. So basically, I'm going to store that away, lock it up, and throw away the key because I can't handle that right now. Which is super understandable. Eventually, they find a gated community called Wilshire Estates, thinking, hey, we could stay here permanently. It's a big gated neighborhood, a bunch of really nice houses. You can keep the gate up during the day, go for supply runs, and kind of maybe this can be a permanent place for us. So they clear out a house of zombies. Everyone spends the night in there. Everyone's very happy to be not packed into the RV like sardines. Next morning, they spread out into groups to start clearing out houses. But also Rick, as he's kind of walking the perimeter of the community, finds that there had been a sign that was covered up, and he knocks the snow off of the sign as it's started to be winter, and it said, "All dead, do not enter." So immediately as the groups break off and start taking out zombies with guns, it is waking more and more of these things up, and the entire community is overrun. Just a massive amount of zombies get up out of houses and start pursuing, and again, none of them are fast. Like, they're slow and shambling, but they're coming from every direction, and the group, it's not a group of combat-trained military or police officers. It's Dale, who's in his 50s or 60s. It's Lori, who's pregnant. It's a bunch of kids. So it's easy for the chaos to paralyze them. To that end, Donna is killed. So she gets caught by a zombie, and Billy and Ben are without a mother now, and her husband Alan is just mentally spiraling after that. They barely escape, get into the RV, and get back on the road to search for a new base. One day on the trip, they know they're starting to get low on food, so Rick, Tyrese, and Carl go out hunting, and all of a sudden, Carl gets shot. And the panel is very stark, and just, man, again, like, when the book came out, when Walking Dead first came out, I was probably like 12, 13, 14, had no idea it existed. And then when the show came out, which was 2009, 2010, don't quote me, I didn't watch the show. I was 19, 20, but now I'm in my mid-30s and I have a son, and seeing his son get shot was just like, it hit me real hard. Not in like a tear-up kind of way, but almost just like a gut punch, like took my breath away. It was an accident by a guy named Otis, who was out hunting as well. Rick is about to kill Otis, but sees that Carl is alive. He's still breathing. Otis has been staying at a farm up the road. He says there's someone there with some medical experience who can help and hopefully save Carl. So they run to what is the farm of Herschel Green, who is luckily able to remove the bullet. It kind of hit him in the midsection. Remove the bullet, stabilize Carl, close the wound, and Herschel, who is older, probably around the same age as Dale, but a farmer, so he's hardy and physically with it. He invites the group to stay on the farm as for Carl to recover, and he introduces just a cheaper by the dozens worth of kids that he has. His oldest daughter is Lacey, and then he has a son named Arnold, another daughter named Maggie, another son named Billy, and then two young girls who are twins, probably about the same age as Carl, actually probably a little younger than Carl, maybe like 5 or 6, named Rachel and Susie. So his wife and one of his sons had already died from the outbreak. Otis is staying there. He's from up the road, but him and his girlfriend Patricia are staying with Herschel for the time being just because it's far safer. It's a far safer location for them. Maggie, one of Herschel's daughters, and Glenn kind of hit it off, and they kind of have a conversation like, it's the end of the world. Glenn's like, I've never even like had an intimate relationship with any woman. And Maggie's like, I'll do it. And he's kind of caught off guard, and they kind of start by just like getting to know each other a little bit, but really the goal is just to like sleep together because he doesn't want to die a virgin. But eventually they really grow to care about each other. Rick suggests that the group stay in the barn to not kind of put Herschel out of house and home, but Herschel has been keeping zombies in the barn. He's like, we don't know how they work or if they can turn back. So any zombies that have been wandering into the farm, I've been herding them into the barn and just keeping them there. That includes his son as well, his son who died prior to the group getting there. Everyone is immediately like, this is a terrible idea. I don't want to sleep like 50 yards away from a barn full of zombies. But they end up staying. A couple days later, a zombie comes up to the farm. Herschel wants to herd it into the barn, so the group reluctantly helps him. He opens the barn door. The zombie falls out, falls through the door, which unleashes the rest of them. Immediately, his son Arnold is bitten by his son Sean, which was the one that was bitten and he was keeping in the barn. So his son kills another one of his sons. Lacey is also killed by the swarm, so Herschel just lost 2 kids, and really seeing his third again that had already died. Eventually, they fight all of them off. The group, the RV group, is like, we can't stay here anymore, and the Greens stay behind, along with Glenn, actually, because him and Maggie are starting to feel closer and closer, so he wants to stay with her and protect her and kind of keep developing the relationship, which Herschel agrees to. So, back on the road, eventually Dale and Andrea are hunting and scavenging, and they find an abandoned prison, which is where the group will end up going next. So, that brings us to the end of Miles Behind Us, and in that chapter, there were 3 notable deaths: Donna from the group, and then Arnold Green and Lacey Green. So, yeah, that's the recap. Let's get into my thoughts. Okay, I mean, the momentum from the first arc just keeps building for me with Miles Behind Us. Tyrese has turned into, like I mentioned with the first arc, how Rick was the only real character that I was really getting connected to. And then Tyrese comes in, and I'm like, I love this guy. This guy seems great. Him and Rick as like the dynamic duo of the group, like the protectors. I love that dynamic. I love that kind of friendship that's blossoming. The pregnancy thing, I kind of saw coming, but it doesn't, like, with as predictable as that is, I think Rick's emotional reaction to having that conversation with Dale about it being Shane's kind of salvaged it for me, where it's like, Rick knows. It would be one thing if Rick had, like, wasn't even considering it or had no idea, but the fact that he knows and is struggling with that, I think makes that passable for me personally. Having members of the group slowly picked off, like at Wilshire Estates and like at the Green Farm, makes sense. And while you may not care about the characters that die, like Donna or Arnold or Lacey, seeing their loved ones react to them dying really gives, for me at least, a similar emotional impact. So yeah, I think it's just so well written, and the art is so perfectly, I used this word earlier, but again, so perfectly stark. Man, I was a little sad to see Glenn stay behind. I like Glenn a lot. The idea of, and he hadn't had to do it as much since they left the city, but the idea of a runner basically running into hostile areas to gather supplies or run out, I think is a super interesting concept. It makes total sense and it would be needed, but still interesting nonetheless. So yeah, Miles Behind Us was great. And I think it's just going to get even better from here. So the prison is up next. Next section is Safety Behind Bars. So the third arc, Safety Behind Bars. The group gets to the prison. It is surrounded by two gates, an outer gate and then an inner gate. So they struggle to get the gates open, but they eventually get through and slowly begin to clear out zombies, kind of section by section, very methodically, to create safe spaces for them. Chris, who is Julie's boyfriend, and remember Julie is Tyrese's daughter, is complaining because him and Julie usually have to stay back in the RV and babysit all of the kids. But he's just like so snarky about it and so entitled that you have zero sympathy for him. But Rick and Tyrese eventually, as they're clearing everything out, they find a cafeteria that's been barricaded. So they eventually get it open, thinking at the ready with guns, and Tyrese has a hammer, Rick has an axe. They open the door expecting a bunch of zombies, but they find four people. The only four survivors left at the prison as far as anyone knows. They are Dexter, Andrew, Axel, and Thomas, and it's revealed that they're all prisoners and none of them were prison guards. So after a tense introduction where they reveal what they're in prison for, Dexter's in prison for murdering his I think it was girlfriend and a guy she was cheating with. Andrew pushed drugs, I think. Axel, I'm blanking on what Axel did. I'll put it up on the screen what he did. I can't remember for the life of me right now. And then Thomas said he was in there for tax evasion. So Dexter, a very big buff guy. Andrew, kind of a smaller, like just a smaller guy who seems to have a thing with Dexter, kind of romantic thing, or at least there's undertones of it. Axel looks like a biker, which, you know, of course, and Thomas looks like an accountant. So, so they show the RV group around the prison, and seeing how much space there is, and like the kitchen of the prison being incredibly well stocked. Guards left, prisoners got out. Most of them went back and tried to find family or just run away from the prison. But these four were like, this feels like a way safer place to be with all of this happening. So the prison's pretty well stocked. With as much space as there is, Rick thinks it's only fair that he drive the RV back to the farm, Herschel's farm, and invite the Green family to live at the prison with them. Because there is so much space, because it is so safe with the kind of dual fence, like Attack on Titan wall system that the prison has. So they drive back. The Green family also has experience farming, which just from a sustainability and not having to constantly hunt things, or they'll eventually run out of canned goods. So having them on site building a farm would be incredibly beneficial. Otis decides to hang back to take care of the livestock and tend to the farm. So he thinks, I guess, just having one person there making the noise of one person will not attract as many zombies. So we see Chris and Julie have sex, and then they agree to basically a suicide pact to shoot each other to kind of get themselves out of this world. And you had kind of seen hints of like the ends of conversations with them, saying like it's almost time, stuff like that. So after they have sex, Chris shoots Julie, but Julie either didn't fire fast enough, or she kind of just couldn't do it at the last minute, just emotionally. So people hear the gunshot. Rick and Tyrese are the closest ones. They run in, and Tyrese sees his daughter who is dead. He basically goes into a berserker rage and attacks Chris. Before that, Julie starts to come back as a zombie, and Chris shoots her in the head, which Tyrese, blinded by his love for his daughter, was holding her at arm's length as she was trying to basically bite him after she had turned and be like, hey, it's me, it's your dad, come on, you can just hold on a second and think. Chris shoots her in the head, kills her. Tyrese goes into berserker mode, chokes and brutally beats Chris to death. Rick is the only one there. He's the only one who knows. The next morning, basically Tyrese wakes up early and throws the bodies into a fire. That they're already making fires to burn the corpses of the zombies that they're taking out in the prison, and he just threw the other bodies in before anyone woke up. But with that being said, Julie didn't die by a bite from a zombie or a scratch or anything like that. She came back just from a normal gunshot wound, which is huge because it infers that this zombie virus is dormant in everyone. And it's just as soon as anyone dies, whether it's from infection by a zombie bite, falling down a set of stairs, whatever it may be, that the virus activates once the body completely shuts down. So that is both somewhat reassuring, just in terms of, oh, we know a little bit more about how this works, and super scary because everyone's like, this is in all of us at this point. So that was a really big moment for me as well, because I didn't catch it in the moment as well. I think I was shocked by the entire scene, and then I think Rick and Tyrese talk a little bit about it after, and it's like, yeah, she still turned, but she wasn't bitten. And I was like, oh my god, you're right. So some time passes. Glenn and Maggie who are still together and falling in love. They find a barber shop within the prison, and it's relatively far away from everyone else, so they go in there to have sex and give each other haircuts. They come back and see the haircuts, and Herschel's youngest twin daughters, like the 5 or 6 year old Susie and Rachel, really want to go see the barbershop. So while that's happening, Tyrese, Andrea, and Billy go to the gym to clear it out. And during this time, Rick has driven back to the original campsite outside of Atlanta after knowing that everyone comes back as a zombie regardless of how they die. And he basically goes back to shoot Shane, who they buried. And when Rick gets there, he kind of, can't remember if he digs part of him up and then he wakes up, or Shane just wakes up and stands up out of the dirt. Rick shoots him. So Rick is not here for this part with Tyrese. But Tyrese, Andrea, and Billy go to the gym to clear it out. But Tyrese, who has kept it together on the surface very well after his daughter's death, basically charges in to a gym full of zombies and is overtaken. And so Andrea and Billy basically close the door. And this is Billy, Herschel's son, who is like 18, I think, 16, 17, 18, somewhere around there, and not Billy, the twin brother of Ben. I just now realized there are 2 Billys. That's confusing. Anyway, they basically run out of the gym and re-barricade it, assuming Tyrese was bitten, like it's over for him. Later on, Herschel is looking for Susie and Rachel. He remembered that they wanted to see the barbershop, so he goes to the Glenn leads him to the barbershop, and he walks in and sees Susie and Rachel's bodies with their heads that have been decapitated from their bodies. Everyone assumes it's Dexter, because he's the only person in the prison who has a history of murdering live human people. So they lock him up and kind of figure out what to do with him next. Rick comes back, is told of Tyrese's death. He figures it's only right for him and respectful to go to the gym and put Tyrese out of his misery, not his misery, but put an end to Tyrese so he isn't one of those things anymore. So he goes to the gym, opens it. Every zombie is dead. And Tyrese is just sitting in the corner. Somehow, and this is when I was like, Tyrese is the biggest badass of this entire thing. He killed every zombie in there, did not get bit. How? It seems like a miracle. But he's there, he's alive. So they didn't end up losing Tyrese, who's become kind of a pillar of the group. While Dexter is locked up, Andrew comes by and they start talking about kind of a coup against the non-prisoner group, just because of everything that's been going on. Also, while this is happening, Andrea is doing laundry in the laundry room at the prison, and suddenly she's attacked by Thomas, who becomes clear is the murderer, probably wasn't actually in here for tax evasion. Thomas slices her up the side of her face and cuts off her earlobe, but she's able to escape and runs back to everyone else. Rick immediately jumps in and beats Thomas in the face so badly that he breaks his hand to where fingers are going every which way. Eventually, Thomas is freed by Patricia, Otis's girlfriend, who had come to the prison with the rest of the group, thinking that he's sick, he just needs help. She lets him out. Thomas immediately attacks her, but Maggie is close by and shoots Thomas, finally killing him, and his body is thrown out to the zombies to be eaten. So now Herschel, by my count, has lost 5 children. And somehow he's still functioning. It's unbelievable. Andrew eventually breaks Dexter out with Patricia, her second bad decision, get to the prison armory, get shotguns, SWAT gear, bulletproof vests, and threaten the group to leave the prison, and that's how this section of Safety Behind Bars ends. Notable deaths in this section were Julie, Chris, Susie Green, Rachel Green, and then Thomas, the prisoner. So, definitely an action-packed section, but yeah, let's get into what I think about it. Okay, and the momentum continues. The story's only getting better, in my opinion. There really is a sense of being able to take a breath once they get to the prison, and just having that kind of dual fence setup is really big. It made me feel safer just reading it. The ending with Chris and Julie, I think it had been foreshadowed for a while, and yeah, I think it went down probably just as I would have expected it to. I think Tyrese killing Chris, I think, makes sense within the context of everything that's happening. The biggest part of this section for me, outside of the kind of twist with Thomas ending up being the murderer, was the revelation of the kind of dormant virus that's in everyone. And basically everyone will turn into one of these things when they die, regardless. It might take a couple minutes, like it did for Julie, or it could take a lot longer, like it did for Alan back in the beginning, where he was bitten, but he didn't die right away. So it just kind of depends. But another great section. I am completely hooked. This is far better than I think I ever thought it would be. That's unfair. I knew it was beloved. I guess I'm liking it way more than I thought I would. It's kind of semantics, but way better way for me to say that. MVPs of the group for me, Rick, obviously, Tyrese, and then Andrea. I love Andrea in this story. She's just awesome. She has no experience with a gun, basically becomes the marksman of the group, is able to fight off Thomas. She has a 6 scar now, kind of looks like the Joker. But I have a little bit looked at early episode summaries of the show, and seeing how they did Andrea makes me real sad, and seeing how they kept Shane for a lot longer in place of Tyrese also makes me bummed out. But again, I haven't watched it. Who knows? It might be good. So, yeah. I mean, and what a cliffhanger to end it on. The prisoners basically trying to force the group out. So, next section up is The Heart's Desire. So, I'll tell you what, the momentum continues. So, let's get into it. So, section 4, The Heart's Desire. Before we get to where we left off with Dexter and Andrew basically forcing the rest of the group out at gunpoint from the prison, we see a woman who has 2 zombies chained up behind her, and she's leading them. The zombies don't have jaws or teeth or arms, I believe. And she comes across the green farm, finding Otis, who is in trouble, saves him, and Otis finally makes the call. The group I was with went to this prison nearby. I'm going there. You can come if you want to. You just saved my life. So that's kind of the cold open for this section. Then we pick up back at the prison. Andrew forgot to close the doors when they broke into the armory. Dumb Andrew. Dumb. So that allows zombies to come out in waves within the prison from that building. Everyone kind of has to work together, the prisoners and the group. So there's a lot of gunfire taking out all the zombies. At which point you see Rick in the middle of it look over to Dexter and shoot him in the head. After the chaos has died down, Rick basically says to everyone, there was a lot of gunfire, he must have gotten hit by a stray bullet. Tyrese knows what happened, he saw it happen, but doesn't say anything. Whether or not it's kind of an act of gratitude to Rick for not saying anything about him killing Chris the way he did, it might be. But with Rick taking Dexter out, that puts the coup, that takes care of the coup that was trying to happen. Andrew, thinking that he's going to die too, just runs out of the front of the gates to presumably die. But Axel, who was not part of the coup and has been on the group's side the whole time, he stays in the prison and is accepted by the group as one of their own at this point. Otis finally makes it to the prison, and the woman with the chained up zombies, whose name is Michonne. Michonne has a katana, and katanas are cool. Efforts to clear out the prison resume, and Alan is bitten in the leg. He's carried out of the zombie-infested area to a safe area, where Rick suddenly makes the call to amputate his leg, basically from right above the bite down, to try and stop the infection from spreading. So that happens, and he chops off the leg, and they rush him to Herschel, basically, who is, for all intents and purposes, their medic at this point. Once all of that calms down, Alan doesn't really seem like he's improving. Michonne kind of makes sexual advances on Tyrese. Little did they know, Carol was nearby and saw this happening. Again, Carol, who had been with Tyrese and was with Tyrese. But seeing that, she attempts to commit suicide, but fails. The most damaging part of that entire thing is that her daughter is the one who finds her. Again, Sophia, who's maybe 6, 7, 8, something like that. Eventually, everyone learns about this. Rick blames Tyrese for Carol's situation. And then Tyrese calls out Rick on purposefully killing Dexter. And Glenn is nearby, and he's hearing all of this stuff that was only between Tyrese and Rick previously. And then Rick and Tyrese get into a fistfight. Eventually, Tyrese punches him. Rick falls against a railing that's kind of on a second floor, blacks out, falls over the railing, and lands back first on the first floor. Wakes up in pain, and the fighting kind of comes to an end with Andrea arriving to tell everyone that Alan died. The leg amputation did not work, and he just ended up passing away. Rick wakes up from the fight and says that he'll be the one to go back and to take him out so that he doesn't come back. So now, with Glenn knowing, the entire group kind of being around, everyone knows what Rick did to Dexter and knows it was premeditated, and think that Rick is kind of losing control and kind of losing his ability to make sound decisions. So while he was out from the fight recovering, the group made a leadership council, more or less, to make it less of Rick making all the decisions and there being a group to make the decisions. So it consists of Rick, Tyrese, Dale, and Herschel. They do make a comment about how there's no women on it. I think they said that the women didn't want to be on it, something like that, which was a little weird. But Rick gives an iconic speech to the group afterward to kind of address the thought that he's starting to crack. And he says, "You think we hide behind walls to protect us from the Walking Dead? Don't you get it? We are the Walking Dead." End of section. Super strong way to end it. Notable deaths in this section: Dexter, probably Andrew, who just ran out of the prison into the zombie-infested fields, and then Alan. So, yeah, let's get into this one. So, The Heart's Desire. I sound like a broken record, but I think it just keeps getting better. Michonne is introduced to be just the coolest character in the world. Early on, it's Rick and Glenn like cover themselves with basically like the fluids of like the zombies to try and sneak past them, which works somewhat. And that's what, in a way, Michonne is doing with those two zombies she's pulling behind her, where it's basically like, oh, the other zombies won't attack because their kind is right there. So once she gets into the prison, it's agreed that she has to kill them. So, which she does, again, with the katana far too easily. But, I mean, her coming in at this point makes a lot of sense to throw a wrench into kind of the most consistent character so far in Tyrese and Rick. Just throwing them into disarray and really having them majorly butt heads for the first time was, I think, needed and well done at the same time. Carol just comes across as very broken, and she feels like she kind of just always needs to be with someone. But I think at some point, while she's recovering, Laurie comes to visit, and Carol's like, Laurie, I think I'm in love with you. Like, you, me, and Rick should all be married. And Laurie's just like, what are you talking about? So Carol obviously has a lot of problems. But the Leadership Council seems like a good idea. Having all of these major decisions in this completely unknown of a world fall onto one person, especially one person who has a wife, child, and a child on the way. Like, there's already enough stress there. It needs to be spread around a little bit. So, makes total sense. And yeah, there's not much more I have to say about this section. I liked it. It felt shorter to me a little bit. I could be making that up, but... And with that, we've come to the end of this part 1 of The Walking Dead Image Initiation series. I've had a great time reading this. I don't know if I'm going to release all of the parts kind of back to back to back, just for full transparency. Where I'm at in the series at the recording of this video, I've read through the end of the second compendium. So, yeah, I don't want it to just be a big block of Walking Dead videos on my channel all in the row. So I might record them and break them up with other episodes of Image Initiation or other videos in general. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, I know it was a long one, please leave a like, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below on ways I can improve the video, the format. If there's stuff you really want me to talk about or stuff you want me to kind of lay off of, I'm open to suggestions. So thanks again for watching, and yeah, keep an eye out on the channel for a new video real soon.